sometimes dead is better.
I'm Steph.
And I'm Ange.
We're
Nerdazons.
That was awesome.
Okay. I think we need to make it scary. Ooh.
And it's not even Halloween.
I know. So this fortnight was my choice. I chose to do Pet Sematary 1989 versus the 2019 remake. And I chose it because there are some remakes that I just don't want to watch. And this forces me to watch it because I do want to watch them, but I don't want to watch them. You know what I mean?
Why didn't you want to watch the remake of this one?
I think when I see remakes of like films I enjoyed or I liked, and when I see it's been remade, I just know it's not going to be good. I already have that bias opinion that I feel like it's not going to be good. So yeah, and then I just don't get motivated to watch it. And I think that's kind of what happened. I know we were talking a lot about doing a Candyman episode, and then I saw a lot of the reviews and things like that, and it just kind of really threw me off, and I just haven't been motivated to do that as an episode. You know what? I'm going to do it as an episode. It'll force me to watch it. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like one of those things where it's just like, oh, and especially I think I find when older horror films are remade, I don't know, like the marketing's not as good. And I feel like they go straight to DVD. And when it goes straight to DVD, it's already an impression of, oh, it's not a good film.
Yep. And that's how you find a lot of underrated films as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there's so many movies that I was like, how did this not make cinema?
Yeah, I actually I know we're just not quite into the episode yet. My partner, who's not a big horror film, saw a trailer the other day and he showed me it. And I actually am kind of keen to see it. It's called Smile.
I saw the trailer for that, and that it looks like an effed up film.
I think we should go and watch it. Awesome segue back to the movie choice of today, just because, you know, Smile has an Australian actress, and now we've got the remake of Pet Sematary also has an Aussie actor, so which is great. Let's get into the synopsis. So Pet Sematary 1989. After tragedy strikes, a grieving father discovers an ancient burial ground behind his home with the power to raise the dead. Pet Sematary 2019. Dr. Lewis Creed and his wife, Rachel, relocate from Boston to rural Maine with their 2 young children. The couple soon discover a mysterious burial ground hidden deep in the woods near their new home. Before we get started, I have a feeling we're going to cross from story to characters very quickly. So I'm going to just forewarn you, if the structure is a little bit off, that's okay, because I think it's what I have to talk about characters really connects to the story.
So are we just going to jump straight into characters and story?
I think we can talk story first on a few points. So I'll talk about how I started this. I actually started with the remake because I thought, you know what, I've seen the original quite a few times. Let's start with the remake because it had been some time since I'd seen the original, and I thought it could be good having a gap between the two. There were some things that I didn't like with it. There were some changes to the story that really, they were subtle, that it didn't affect it too much, but it was enough to be like, oh, damn, they didn't just copy that. It threw me off, and I was just like, all right, I see you, it's not so bad. So first of all, with the story, you were expecting the boy, the son, to be hit by the truck. And then they even made it look so close, but Rachel pulled him out just in time, and I was just like, oh, and then the daughter got hit, and I was just like, was not expecting that. And I was just they still stuck to the story, and I was like, all right, that was a good change, that you brought something new to the film, but you still kept to the same sort of structure.
I watched the original first because I was like, okay, it looks scary, so I'm going to watch the original first, so that way I'm not as scared going in.
Yeah.
But that particular scene, whoa.
Oh, you know what? I remember watching this as a kid. So my older sister used to watch horror films, and same with my godmother. Like, they used to watch horror films and they'd babysit me. So like, I used to be a scaredy cat, but then I think I desensitized quite early. I just remember how heartbreaking, or like how creepy and sad it was when everyone would be like, oh, and look at his little cute little sailor suit. And it's just an image that always stuck in my head from a kid. Another thing that they changed, which also got me as well, which I was just like, all right, I'm here for this, is when John Lithgow as Judd, when he was going in the house, you know, I know where he dies in the original. the original, who was played by Fred Gwynne, he goes into the bedroom, and I'm pretty sure it's under the bed. It all happens in the bedroom. And then I was expecting it when John Lithgow lifts the bed up. I'm waiting for it. Didn't happen until the stairwell, and I'm like, all right, same sort of concept. You got him around the ankle, like you still snuck out of him in the house. You still got him. It was just crazy. Those little changes for people who've seen the film, you still know what's going to happen, but they just changed it a little bit, and I thought that was a really good way to remake it. Another big thing in the story is the ending. That was a bit different. Obviously, the story sort of morphed a bit by having the daughter, Ellie, go into the cemetery and not Gage in the sequel. And then, because I guess she's a bit older, she could comprehend a bit more. And then she buries the mum, Rachel, and then they kill the dad, and then they come back for Gage at the end. And it just really, I think it was just a really different ending compared to the original, because it just, to me, I don't know if I like the ending of the new one, because it really came across like a zombie film, or like,
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, like a survival film where it's like the last one left, they all become, I don't know, zombies.
A few of the notes I wrote was the end where the parents kissed made me feel sick. Like, it made me feel so icky in the original. I was just like, oh, you're like got blood and guts all over you. Oh. And then the other note that I wrote is with the Achilles heel, and when Gabe dies, all I could think was how much Ange would like this movie. And
that always reminds me of Urban Legends.
Because I also put one of my other notes is, so we all know how I feel about creepy kids. Oh my God, when the kids are playing hide and seek, chills.
Yeah.
That was from the original. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And even the kids in the remake, when they're wearing those creepy masks and they're like all going in with hands on each other's shoulders going into the pet cemetery, I was just like, oh.
Yeah, I don't know why the kids are always like a creepy aspect of horror films.
Because I think because they're so innocent.
Yeah, I don't know, but then like you don't expect them to like attack you.
Oh yeah, you just think, oh, you're a defenseless little kid, it's fine.
Yeah, I have to say, story-wise, I didn't hate the remake, the changes they did. I don't think I liked the ending of the remake. It wasn't a bad remake storyline compared to other horrors that we've done.
Staying on the storyline, they made a few differences in the fact that with Rachel and the sister came out and she's all like twisted and on her arms and legs. Oh, I was like, what? That's so gross. That's so gross. And I like that addition of that part of the storyline rather than, what is it, Rachel's?
Yeah, she's creepy as hell.
Yeah. But the difference of that storyline.
Yeah, they expanded on it more. I was going to talk about that in characters. I think we should just move on to characters now.
Sure.
And we'll continue this chat, because I actually think I preferred. It was much creepier in the new one. I get that, but I preferred the original story because it really, the way we observed it, you can understand why as a kid she was creeped out by her sister. And you can understand the reasoning why she was terrified to move or go and see her sister, which is why she died. Whereas they expanded on it more, where she physically heard her sister trying to get to the food and fell down the dumbbell and things like that. And that just seems scary. But I don't know. I feel like the vibe in the original really came across like the fear of a child's mind, which gives you reasoning why Rachel didn't help her.
Also, I think always the originals, to me, the original 80s horrors are always hokey.
Yeah.
They've always got a hokiness to them. So I'm now learning that if I'm going to watch a horror movie, the 80s version, I'm not going to get scared.
Exactly. Oh my God, it took me so long to tell you this, and you finally clicked. But also shout out to Rachel in the original, Denise Crosby from Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
I was almost on the right track. Cool. Yeah, so out of the two mums, actually, this is another thing I feel that they changed between the remake and that, because I hated Rachel in the original, especially in the fact that she was so ignorant to something that was so natural in life. She told her husband, promise her that nothing will happen, and he's trying to be realistic and be like, there is always a chance something can happen, and it's a lesson that you need to learn. She was so away with the fairies in the original that it infuriated me. And it's just like this whole problem happened because you couldn't have a chat. I know this is going to sound horrible and harsh because I love pets. I really do. Like, they are such a big part of my life, and I've had them a long time, but I feel that they're a very important part of kids' life to teach them this lesson in life that death does come around, because their lifespans are shorter and they'll learn it before their parents get to that. It's just a horrible thing to think about, but it's a good life lesson
I
for
get
them.
that. One of the other notes that I wrote about Rachel was, okay, when Rachel calls Judd from Boston, she's like, we are staying for a few days. And then the next minute, she's like, no, I'm coming straight home. And then when she says, quit your dilly-dally, I'm like...
Was
that
that was in the original?
Yeah, that was the original. I wasn't a big fan of her in the original.
I wasn't either. She was just so infuriating. I do like that in the remake with Amy Steinmetz. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But with Amy, she still brought that element of let Ellie be a kid. I don't want to talk to her about this topic yet. And I'm like, okay, I get that. The time will come, but you just want to let it go for a bit. She didn't push the fact that in the original, where Denise Crosby's version of Rachel was like, no, she must never learn about it. It will never happen to her. She'll never experience it. It was just so...
Don't cotton ball your kids.
Yeah, it was very different sort of aspects and vibes to it, I found, with the Rachels. But since we talked about Ellie, I would very much like to talk about Ellie. Well, she doesn't have as big a story in the original as she does in the remake. So Ellie becomes the main...
Not protagonist.
Antagonist.
That's the wrong one. Antagonist. Me failed English. When she doesn't blink, when she first comes back to life, chills. Like,
she was
such a
so
great
good. I think her
actress.
name, Yete Lawrence. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Yete was incredible. And do you know what part? The line that she said, and it really got me, that I'm like, you're fudging amazing, was when she's laying there and she's like, I can hear the wind. And he's like, there is no wind, sweetie. And she's like, no, I can hear the wind inside me. And I was just like, yes, because like when you die, obviously they pull all of that out. So she's empty inside. And that line sent chills down my spine. And I'm like, yes, like that is what you do in a horror film. Things like that really just, when he's brushing her hair and then he moves the hair apart
and then
he
you
sees
see the
stitching. And I'm just like, fuck yes. Sorry, part of my language, but I just thought that was chef's kiss brilliant, because it is true. Like, if you're going to get buried and brought back, that's what it's going to feel like to you. You're going to feel empty. There's nothing inside you. You're going to have your autopsy scars and things like that. And I just thought that was perfect. When she said that, I got chills. I was just like, whoa, she can comprehend that.
I think how passionate you are about this and how many points you brought up, I think it's going to change what I rate this movie at the end.
I'm passionate about some things in this one, but we'll talk about that at the end. But I thought
Yete was amazing.
She was so good.
To be so young and to be able to do those technical things of not being able to blink for a bit, being just creepy, and those masks just like, adding those extra chills.
Even the discussion she had, and this is why I think it was really good having her die first as opposed to Gage, because he didn't have the vocabulary or I guess the mental capacity to comprehend what happened, whereas she understood. She's like, I remember being on the road and I remember it went black. Did I die? She knew it when she was having that conversation with him, and you can tell, she could comprehend there was things were missing from her body. She could comprehend that the hair wasn't quite right. She wasn't feeling the pain when he was pulling at her hair. And I guess part of her could also, I didn't think of this until just now, maybe she also realized she did that to the cat when she was combing the hair before she died, So I just thought she, hands down, was the better Ellie, but she got more screen time. I can understand why.
I'm trying to think of whether or not she was better than Gage. In the original, they're kind of the same character they're playing the same part, even though they're
they are. I think in the original he was creepy.
Well, when he had that knife and he's just like, he was...
Yeah, I think I can see what they were trying to do with the original, but having seen just a child a little bit older do it, to
Oh,
see how
yeah.
much more, because she had, I'm pretty sure in the original, the bits of vocal you had of Gage, I think was added in after, and it didn't quite sync, and you could tell, oh, something like, someone else is talking on the kid's behalf. Like, he was creepy, but I think just adding those extra years to having the creepy kid killer worked.
Can I just say that Miko Hughes, who plays Gage in the movie, I didn't realize that he's the little kid out of Kindergarten Cop that says
What?
boys have a penis, girls have a
Girls,
vagina.
no, it was the other way around. Boys
Oh,
have a
yeah.
vagina and girls have a penis.
That's right.
That's
I
so
was
funny. I'm gonna have a look now at his. I didn't really.
He's
Oh yeah,
definitely
yes,
grown
I
up.
can see the picture. He did look really creepy when in the original when they put like all the white makeup on him and he just had that
And
like
that
look on
scar
his
across his
face.
face. Yep.
I still think one thing in the remake and modernizing it, having more of that like autopsy look and scars just looked way better on Ellie. I'd have to say, if you in story, which one you're picking to come back, I think it really worked with Ellie.
I agree. And especially going back to what you said was at the beginning when you're just like, the little boy's dead. That just like, I can't get over that. Just like literally like, because I was
Yeah.
not expecting that.
Oh, so you'd never seen this film, the original?
Never, ever, never seen. We all know how I feel about kids, but
I
especially
know.
creepy kids. So,
I know.
Pet Sematary is one of the creepiest, known to be a creepy kids film. And
Yeah.
so was it. And so it scarred me. No longer scarred, thank you. But because it scarred me, I was just like, nah, Pet Sematary, I've heard so many creepy things about it. I can't do it. I can't do it.
It's actually
And
not that, like, there's not much to the story in the original. There's only, I think, and you'll find that with a lot of Stephen King films, there's only a few key scenes that are scary, and the rest is all story building, which I find creepier because when you pay attention to it and you listen to it, it's like that whole telling a ghost story and you get the goosebumps because you're envisioning it, not watching it, and that's what I think I kind of like about his stuff.
I didn't realize that Stephen King was in the original as well. He played the minister at the funeral.
Oh, yeah. I didn't notice that. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, no, that's a good pickup. I didn't notice that one.
Because I was watching a few little bits and pieces before we were recording, and I was like, why does that minister look familiar? And then I realized, and then I went on IMDb and it's Stephen King.
That's so funny. Yeah, no,
I like
that's
how he pops up in all of his films.
his films. Yeah, kind of like Stanley. Sad.
Let's move on to Lewis.
Yep. And then after that, I want to talk about Judd.
Lewis, in the original, I felt like he didn't feel too much of a father. I felt like he was a bit bland, whereas in the remake, he wanted to protect his daughter at any cost. He wanted to save her. He was like, I know she's dead, but we can bring her back. I just want my family to be reunited again.
So I actually think it's really, yeah, that's a good point. Like, he was really connected to his daughter. And I think that really showed, especially when Ellie could tell that Rachel can sense in the new one that's she's not Ellie.
Not right.
Whereas, like, she knew that, so she could play her dad because she knew her dad was the one that really cared for her. But, you're right.
No, you're right. That the fact that she did know how much her dad loved her, that she was like, I'm going to twist and manipulate him so I can come back and rain terror on everybody.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think deep down that was her intention. I'm pretty sure if she was alive, she wouldn't have wanted that, but she didn't have the choice. He was the one that put her there. But in the original, I was doing some research, and I can't remember the person who wrote this article, so I do apologize, but it's definitely not my point, and I just think it was a really good one. I want to mention it, that Lewis in the original kind of almost had this, on a psychology point of thing, he just wasn't learning the mistake. So he buried the cat. The cat was wrong, so he had to go and, euthanize it. Then Gage was dead. And then the same thing, he had to unfortunately end it. And then he makes the same mistake again with Rachel, thinking, you know what, maybe it'll work again. Third time's a charm. An intelligent doctor could not just let it go. Like, he couldn't move on from that life lesson. So it's really interesting because at the beginning, Rachel's like, don't teach her this, let's not talk about death. It doesn't exist. We don't want to talk about it. And he's like, but you have to talk about it. You've got to accept it. But he couldn't accept that throughout this whole film, and he just kept sending his family to that pet cemetery, and he just couldn't learn the lesson himself.
In the original, where Lewis brings back the guy and he's dead, but he has so much prosthetics and things that you're like,
Victor Pascal.
That's it. Whereas the remake, where Lewis comes in and he saves that guy and there's blood pouring out, and you're just like, there's no way that this guy can survive. Like, that was way creepier.
I
and
actually
more realistic.
I think it looked really creepy, because you even saw like the back of his brain and everything, but it didn't look like a lot of prosthetics on the head. You know, when sometimes there's too much, it kind of looks
Glued
really
on.
high and tall off like the base of your skull, and you're like, oh, we know you've got something like hair or something underneath that, or lots of layers on your head, but it just looked really realistic in the remake. But I actually really want to talk about Judd and Victor together. So in the original, Judd, played by the amazing Fred Gwynne, I don't know which way to pronounce the surname, and then you had Victor Pascal, played by Brad Greenquist, compared to John Lithgow, who I love. John Lithgow, he's never done a bad film, as Judd. And then you also had Obsa Ahmed as Victor Pascal. So these characters in the original played such a pivotal part that I don't feel people pay a lot of attention to. Yeah, so like Judd seems like this, harmless old man. He just wants what's best for Ellie, doesn't want her to be upset. So he's encouraging Lewis, go and bury the cat. He'll come back and Ellie won't be upset. He's really nice, so you think, yeah, I'm going to follow him. And then Victor, all dead, bits of his brain showing. He comes across really creepy because, it's that creepy atmosphere of like, oh, it's the undead. I'm not going to listen to him. And he's trying to warn him and give him good advice. Do not go to the pet cemetery. And it's really interesting. It's that whole thing I love about Tim Burton's films is, sometimes the living are creepier, bland, but they can be perceived as better compared to, other parts of life where they're colourful and bright. And Tim Burton always shows that contrast, whereas these two characters did the same thing. The person who looked scarier and you didn't want to listen to was the one trying to give you the best advice. But because of the way he was shown in the film, you choose not to listen to him and you go with the person who seems nice, but he's actually got terrible advice. And that message was gone because Judd came across kind of a bit more grumpy in the remake.
That's one of my notes, is that I do like John Lithgow, and especially him in Dexter. Whoa, like I did not think he would be a good dramatic horror thriller type
I don't think
person.
I've seen him in that. I think I saw like 2 episodes of Dexter and I stopped.
Oh my gosh, you need to watch it for John Lithgow. He plays, I'm not going to go into it because it'll give you spoilers, but please watch that. Oh my gosh. But I felt like from watching him in Dexter, where he was amazing, he was so creepy and just terrifying in that, to seeing him in this, he just looked like a grumpy old bastard.
He did.
And he came, and whereas in the original, Judd was a cranky old man as well, but he wasn't, I don't know.
He didn't seem like you couldn't approach him as your friendly neighbor. Whereas like there were times with John Lithgow, I'm like, oh, would I want him around my kids?
No.
I thought like that a lot. And it just, even when he's like, follow me, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to follow you. Whereas with Fred Gwynne, I'm like, you know what? I would follow you. You seem like, just an old man parting advice onto me. I feel like you do mean well, but I didn't get that vibe with John Lithgow at all.
And the way that John Lithgow, to me, bullied or peer pressured Lewis to bury the cat there. And he was like, oh no, this is where we do all of the cats, this is where we do all of the animals, but don't look down when you're crossing. And I just felt like, why would you trust this guy? He's obviously creepy, he's obviously up to no good. I didn't like him in this movie at all.
Yeah, I have to agree. It was just different. And I do really love John Lithgow, and I haven't seen him in a bad film, but this is probably the worst I've seen him in.
I agree.
But that whole message, even with Victor Pascal, played by Obsa Ahmed in the remake, that whole message of him, like, he did come across as trying to help you, where he's like, you helped me, I'm going to help you. And I'm like, you know what? I would listen to him because that's the way it came across. But that whole conflicting, message of sometimes the people who seem the nicest aren't the ones you should listen to was gone. That whole like symbolism was gone out of the remake. And I didn't like that.
Yeah, that was definitely its downfall. Its downfall.
So I know when you said that I was really going to like the new one, there were parts that I liked, but there was actually quite a lot I didn't like. And I think having Judd and Victor in the remake really ruined it. Even Jason Clarke as Lewis, there were parts that I liked about him, especially the fact that he was very paternal with his kids.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other parts I didn't like of him.
Oh, when he was trying to, like, keep Ellie a secret, that I was just like, you're turning cuckoo. Like, it's time to stop now. Put her down. Like, it's time to stop now.
Put her down.
Yeah. She's not an animal, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think, I think he played it really well, and especially, like, he always seemed to have the red puffy eyes as someone who was distraught and really heartbroken. And you can see that even the way he brought Ellie back. But when they were laying on the bed, and as soon as she said, I can hear the wind, and he just rolls his head back to look straight up, I'm like, surely you must know. And when he just kept trying to teach Rachel, and she's like, it's your daughter, and she's like, that is not my kid. He should have realized at that point that it's not natural. And yeah, I think from after that point, when Ellie started her rampage, I feel like from there on, I don't know, I just didn't really like him. Even his vibe as a doctor at the beginning was different. Like, you could tell Dale Midkiff in the original, he was a very logical man. He was very science-based. Even with the things that he did with work and the beliefs he had around death, it's really fascinating because he just kept making the same mistake,
Yeah, and like what you said, he's a doctor. He sees death all the time, and he has to deal with it.
Yeah, but in the remake, as soon as the kid died, I get it, that was horrible and gruesome, but he was really, like, cut by it at the end. So he was sitting out the front, and I think that was the morning they had the discussion about the cat. And she was like, oh, like, she didn't even comfort him or anything. I'm like, it just, the vibe and dynamics weren't there.
Since we're talking about it, let's talk about the cat, Church. I know.
And Church, do you know how awesome, like, Winston, sidetrack, because he's named after Winston Churchill, how good John Lithgow is acting as Winston Churchill.
In what? I haven't seen it.
I'm pretty sure he did it in The Crown. And did he do it in
I haven't started The Crown.
Oh my god. It's like season 1. Watch it.
Church in the original was creepy, but he looked fake. Like, it looked like a stuffed cat sometimes. And I don't know, I was just like, yeah, you're not that great. Whereas Church in the remake, the way that they did, like, the creepy matting hair, and that was just, that was so good. It was just, that cat creeped me out.
The element that they added around the whole hair seeming to match, and I don't know, I'm just thinking on it now, is it because when you're dead, your hair technically stops growing? Maybe also, that's why it knocks.
But also because the cat was, covered in blood and stuff.
Yeah, the cat wasn't clean like Ellie was.
Exactly. Whereas, the cat in the original, all they did was just put glowing eyes on it.
Yeah, well, 1989, man. You got to do what you can do. Can we move on to our miscellaneous of set design costumes? Because I have a note to say on set design. So when I watched the first one, when it started, I thought, great, this is going to be crap. That was my opinion when I started. And I started with the new one and then went back to watch the old one. Because when I was watching it, this is exactly how I was watching it. I'm like, something's missing. I'm like, I was watching it and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I'm like, why am I not enticed in it yet? And then I went back and put the old one on and I figured it out straight away. Before I jump into set design, sorry, I'm moving on to soundtrack here. And I realized that it's because in the whole beginning, when they're driving in the car, there's not really much music playing, as the original one has really creepy music. And I figured it out as soon as I saw the name pop up on the screen. I'm like, yes, I know that's why it's so creepy. So the original music soundtrack was done by Elliot Goldenthal. And because I was a major like vampire freak in high school, I knew the name straight away. He did the soundtrack to Interview with a Vampire. So he had that really good gothic, creepy vibe to his soundtrack. And I'm like, no wonder, like, it gripped you immediately. Like, it set the atmosphere of the film. So I had the lights off and everything. And whereas I had the same with the new one, I just wasn't gripped, or like the atmosphere didn't feel as creepy. Like the vibe wasn't creepy yet. But I feel like the soundtrack really did that for the original.
And that's one of the notes that I put down, is that in the original, the soundtrack was so good.
It was such a good supporting soundtrack, and it set that vibe of, you're watching a horror film, it's going to get creepy. And then just based on that intro scene, now I'm sort of jumping a bit here. I am sorry if I'm all over the place, but in the intro scene, the reason I found the original Cemetery scarier is because, like, as it's going through the cemetery, it even has an archway and everything of just like old bits of wood from like, there was an archway from someone's garden, there was bits of a door, there was like different types of wood all thrown together, and I thought that looked really creepy, kind of like the towns pulled apart the skeletons of their old homes to put this danky cemetery together. And I thought that as a set looked way creepier than just seeing this, like, the spiral in the remake.
That was one of the other notes that I made. Even though the kids with their masks and stuff was creepy, and what I was going for back before is that the cemetery in the remake was pretty much like a character of its own. It kept drawing you into it. However, like, I liked that aspect, that they did give more attention to the cemetery rather than just mentioning it. But the set design of the cemetery, so much better.
Yeah, I think it was like what you would envision a creepy old haunted house to look like, all jagged and like broken bits of wood. And I thought that was much creepier in the original than it was in the remake, whereas the remake had really good, I guess that the lighting and everything was very different. I always found when they went there it was a bit darker. There was almost like I feel like a blue like tinge vibe. That kind of set the mood a little bit, but it just doesn't beat the good set design of the original.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. It did feel like a old school haunted house type vibe.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. I think what made it weirder in the remake is, people still went there. They like, people were traipsing all over, I guess, your property in your backyard, burying their dead pets there, and I find that weirder. Whereas it looked like an old abandoned cemetery that hasn't been touched for years in the original. Also, just back to, I'm actually looking at what I physically wrote for my notes back to that set design. Tell me that this is not creepier and cooler. Cobwebs were draped over the wood in the cemetery. Crosses were made from old wooden chairs. Legs, sorry. The archway was built out of some random junk that got put together like lattice and a ladder. Like, that is just like some Frankenstein furniture.
I have a notebook on my face right now.
It's really like my vibe, and I love that. I thought that was so much better than I think it was just two bits of wood that said Pet Sematary, and you just walk through. Like, that whole creative creepiness was gone in the remake. Also, since we're on set design, miscellaneous soundtrack, all of that, I want to really quickly talk about costumes. So it's a blast from the past, as always, to look at the 80s films and what they wear. But I can't really talk too much because it's just general everyday clothing in both films. But one thing I really want to point out is, did you notice how in both films, with the kids that end up obviously dying, they each have a specific like outfit to make them creepier? So like one had the little sailor suit and then Ellie had the little ballerina outfit.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now and I'm like,
I
no.
think both were really cute.
The sailor suit was like
the
added
creepiest.
the extra creepiness
Yep.
with his little top hat and
Oh, yeah.
staff. I was just like, oh, you're really, really, really creepy.
And it looks so much creepier in the original when he unburies him, exhumes him, and he's holding the tiny little thing, and you just see him like pick the foot up and wrap it back up into his like hand, like he's just like lifting it and curling it back into his arm, and it really just puts into perspective how little and tiny he is. And then in the remake, I almost feel like the actress who played Ellie actually was there. Like, I feel like it was a dummy in the original when he's exhuming Gage, but I think in the new one, I think it is actually Ellie he's carrying the whole time because they do show her face a lot. And I don't know, I just feel like it seemed creepier in exhuming Gage's body than it was Ellie's.
Because
But
he
then,
was so little. I think
yeah,
that's what it was.
I think that's
it's
what
it
it
was.
is. Yeah, it's so creepy and it's so sad too. Like, it's such a horrible way to go.
But in the book, I didn't realize that, because I haven't read the book or anything, but
I haven't
looking at a few
either.
notes, that the way Cage dies is that he gets stung by a bee.
Oh, that's some My Girl shit right there.
I know, oh.
That was so sad. Oh, that was sad.
Nope.
Where's his glasses? He needs his glasses to see.
Stop. That makes me sad.
It does. It does. That's sad. Anyway, sorry, wrong movie. All right, let's move on to how many movie reels you give each of these films.
So, my thoughts have changed a little bit. Okay, so the original was good and it was creepy, but I think that in the remake they tried to up the creepiness of the kids. So I'm going to give the original 2.5 because I won't ever watch it again.
Okay.
And just Cage being creepy, and I was scared, but yeah. Whereas 2019, I was going to give it 1.5, but I'm going to give it 2 because you've made some good points, and also Ellie was incredible. But the reason why I'm giving it low is because of John Lithgow. He just was, because of Judd, and definite downer of this film. I actually put down in one of my notes, not even John Lithgow could save this film.
Yeah.
I was creeped out, especially with Ellie and her not blinking, and like what you said with I can feel the wind. But I don't know, these movies weren't my jam.
Totally understand. So I actually would give the original a 2.5. The reason I sit there is, yes, I've seen it many times. I like the story, and I probably would watch it again, but it is not the best horror film. And even in the 80s, I'm pretty sure it wasn't good in comparison to, you had like Nightmare on Elm Street coming out, Friday the 13th was coming out. Like, it wasn't the best horror film of its time. It's good, and I feel like now it's been building more of a fan base, and probably the book is better. Maybe I should read it one day. But I would sit it at a 2.5 for that reason. Because there are other films that I would prefer to watch. But I don't mind it. I've seen it a few times and I like it. And there's so much more elements to it that I like.
Because going back to like 80s horror films and things, I would probably watch what's the movie They're Coming to Get You, Barbara?
Oh, that was Night of the Living Dead. That was
Night
like
of the
the
Living
60s.
Dead. Night of the Living Dead was so much better than Pet Sematary.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying.
I think
even
I
The
got my
Exorcist
hopes
hands
up.
down was better.
Yes. And because I had high hopes for this film being creepy, because everybody's telling me Pet Sematary and it are like one of the two creepiest films from the 80s.
Nah.
And I was like, 80s or early 90s, whatever it was. But yeah,
I think Stephen King even has creepier stuff.
yeah, and especially being Stephen King, I was expecting more from it.
Yeah, look, I can see why people like it, and it's a great concept. I think it's really interesting. That's why I'd leave it at a 2.5. Don't hate
Mhm.
it, but it's not the best.
Mhm.
As for the remake, I'd give it a 2. I was contemplating doing a 2.5, but when I sit back and think, you know what, I would watch the original before I'd watch the remake again, but I'd give it a 2 because it's not a bad remake. Well, I mean, it is bad, but there were some
It's
really,
no
really...
Psycho remake.
No, it's not a terrible remake, but there's some really good elements about that remake that I really liked. There was a lot that let it down, but I think Ellie really saved that film for the points that I'm going to give it. So now the fun part, because fun fact, everybody, I'm
Mhm.
actually winning so far.
I know. I was going through and updating our spreadsheet. I'm at 2 points. Angie's at 2.5.
Yay.
Oh.
You'll probably get one this week. You always pull them like out of your butt. I don't know how. Whenever I'm winning, it doesn't last long. Okay, so for the 1989, or what do you think it got tomato meter?
Going by my score and our scores both being average, I'm going to go 50%.
Close. Higher.
By much?
No.
53.
Oh, you got it.
Oh!
I told you. You always seem to get it right when I
No,
get a
but when you
point.
went, I was like, did I not get
Because you
it?
got it. No, you got it.
Yes. Yes.
Ugh.
We're now tied.
Okay, audience score. Do you want to have a go at that?
I'm gonna do the same and go 50%.
Higher.
I'm gonna go similar to this one, 54%.
No, it actually got higher. It was 59.
Oh.
Not by
Oh.
much, but I feel like it'll ever grow higher. I feel like the cult following will eventually push the audience score up. Okay,
Oh.
let's have a look at what do you think the remake got?
Again, because we both scored it the same, I'm going to go that it was lower than the original. I'm gonna guess 45%.
Higher.
Higher than 45?
Yep.
By much?
Yep.
Ah. Ah, that's so disappointing. That it got so sort of 60. I'm looking at your face while I'm saying the thing. I'm like 62%.
No, it actually got 57.
Ah.
Which I actually think these scores reflect on what we've said. So the first one got 53 and this one got 57. So there were elements that we liked of each. It's
Mhm.
like if only the story, I don't know, like in the graphics, you could take bits of them and combine and it'd be pretty good. And I think seeing how close these scores are reflect what we were thinking about the films. Do you want to have a go at the audience score?
I'm gonna stick with what I said that the Rotten Tomato should have been. 42%.
Lower.
Ah. By much?
Yeah.
37%.
That's not much that you've moved, but it got 32. So it was like 10,
Ah.
10 low. Yeah. So obviously a lot of people hated it. I can see why as well. There were only good bits, but the whole film as a whole wasn't as good. But I think these scores reflect where we also ranked them. But now we're
That sounds
tie.
like now we're tying. Ooh.
All right. Let's move on to...
Notice on's Nerdy Notables.
Okay, so I was actually in a really, really big mood lately. I don't know why, but I just kept thinking of the film Practical Magic. I've been
That's
listening to the soundtrack like nuts, and do you know what I did when I finished my studies last night? I had the house to myself. I'm like, you know what? I flick the light off, pour myself a beer, and I'm gonna watch Practical Magic. God, that's such a good film.
okay. So me and one of the guys that I'm doing acting with, we have he actually made a Excel sheet of all of the movies that he's seen. He's actually logged them
Whoa.
from He's only done it from 2013, but he's logged them, and we've been trying to like outdo each other for the most randomest, weirdest movie. And thank you, I've just added Practical Magic to my list.
I love it. You know how you said you have your go-to favorite for old films? This is one of my top fives. I love this film. I was looking at potentially doing the book and movie, but then I heard the book is pretty crap.
Going through, because I've been going through my like list, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love Sandra Bullock and I love the Lake House.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
It's
Really?
a great film. Yeah.
It's okay.
And
I
it was
wouldn't say
on
it's
the
a
other
great
night.
film. It's not as good as it's not as good as, you know, peak 90s Practical Magic. And the
Or
hair
Speed.
goals. Oh god, I had wanted both of their hair. The length that they grew their hair and nice wavy locks that Sandra Bullock had. I'm like, oh, this is like peak 90s.
Because I was talking to one of my friends, and I used to just not give two hoots about my hair and being like, do you want to dye it? Do you want to cut it? Like, if
Same.
you weren't my friend unless you cut my hair. And one time, because I was going through some old photos, and because I'd watched Scream and I was obsessed with Drew Barrymore, I had a Drew Barrymore Scream haircut.
Wow. I feel like
Yeah.
you either had, you know, the witchy vibe with your hair in the 90s, or you went like the Scream, like there was a weird like mid 90s where it was all short.
Mhm.
Like everyone was cutting their hair short. It was either like chin length or Neve Campbell in the second Scream, where she had that really nice like little. I would have killed for that look
Not
as
that,
well. So different.
not that Scream chippy choppy one where she had the horrible fringe.
Or the new one.
No, one of the older ones. She had a terrible
Oh,
fringe
that's
that
the
was like,
third one. That was Courtney Cox.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Courtney Cox, that's it. Whoops. So I got the opportunity to see the Black Phone the other
Yes,
day,
I'm going to see it on the 4th.
and speaking of Stephen King, I didn't realize that it's based on a short story by Stephen King's son.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no spoilers. However, I was expecting it to be super scary, but now realizing it's Stephen King. Stephen King's more like
Psychological
psychological.
thriller. Yeah, which I like. I prefer thriller, suspense.
I was underwhelmed. However, the friend I went with was like, "Oh my gosh, this is an amazing film."
I still have a free ticket. Maybe you should come and join me and experience it again.
Maybe. I don't know if I'd see it again.
I kind of want
And
you to.
we'll do.
So
You
just
know
so
what? We'll do
everyone
Smile
knows,
together.
I've wanted Steph to come and watch a horror film with me for so long.
We will definitely see Smile together.
You'll,
Or there's a
I'll
new.
wait and see it when it happens.
Okay. Or there's a new Key and Peele horror film coming out too.
I haven't seen any of their horror films yet.
Get Out was Also, oh my gosh, I've done so much since I've been sick. So I went and saw Alaska from RuPaul. Oh my gosh, she is so much fun. She was amazing. She did like some of her songs. So she did, This Is My Wig. And she came out and she was actually like, I was expecting her to like lip sync and be, parades around the stage, but she just got up and did her songs, and oh my gosh, she's so much fun.
Ooh, okay. Very nice. I'm not doing much but studying, so.
Oh.
Yes.
I've also caught up with the boys, and I want somebody else to talk to about the boys because a lot of people are like, "Nah, I'm gonna binge it." No, watch it.
I
Watch it
will
week to
watch
week
it
with me.
eventually one day. It's on the bottom of my list.
Yeah, I was looking at like my Netflix and Stan to watch list. It's like 3,000 kilometers long.
Oh my god.
It's
And
just-
yet
yeah.
we always default to things we've seen. Okay, so next month I'm actually doing another listener choice from our number one fan supporter, Macca Jr.
Shout out to Mecca Jr.
Yeah, number one from the beginning, every episode. He has chosen Street Fighter versus the Legends of Chun-Li film, which I'm actually keen to see. I haven't seen the sequel / a delayed sequel. I don't really know what you would say. It's two from the universe of the game. So yeah, I'm going to do those ones.
So we've also had another listener's choice from Aussie Book Chick that said we should do Fantastic Four for the upcoming new Fantastic Four. So that we should do
2005 versus 2015.
Yes.
Which I'm really keen for 2005 because I only remember what's his name? Something McMahon. I only remember his name as Cole from Charmed. The Aussie
Yes.
guy. He was like my biggest heartthrob from that series. Even then I had a thing for the bad guys.
This is one of the movies where I was like, oh my God, Chris Evans. Yeah. But also, I don't know how to pronounce it. Ian Grufford. He was in that as well. So he played Reed Richard.
Mhm.
He was in a Aussie TV show, which I highly recommend as well. Also, iView and SBS On Demand are really underrated streaming services.
Yeah.
But he was in an ABC show called Harrow. He's a doctor and he's a forensic pathologist.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. So next month, July, is Listeners Month.
It is Listeners Month. How exciting.
So exciting. Okay.
So if you want to listen to us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your good podcasts, you can also send us an email at nerdazons@outlook.com, and you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
We also have merch by the amazing Craft Caster. You can get that at Teespring. Until then, stay nerdy.